years after the Shadow Warrior remake, Devolver Digital and Flying Wild Hog were back with a follow-up. This FPS sequel was built within the same Roadhog engine as the previous installment, but modified to have better lighting techniques, larger level density, and online functionality, being entirely playable in up to 4-player online co-op, making it the first in the series to be online. With Shadow Warrior 2, it was clear from straight out the gate that Flying Wild Hog wanted to modernise Lo Wang's adventure more than it ever had. Shadow Warrior 2 is the series' step into the modern age of gaming, and with that jump comes semi-open world levels, filled with tick box styled objectives, and loot consisting of modifications and upgrades that you can now tinker with in lots of menu screens. Oh, the joy of modern gaming. Shadow Warrior 2 is no more of a first-person shooter than the previous was, which to me felt more like in the vein of a hack and slasher. Here it now feels more like a first-person action RPG, more of a dungeon crawler like Diablo rather than a bombastic shooter like Doom. Your foes have levels now, your guns have levels, the levels have levels, and if your stats aren't exactly as up to par as what you're going to face, you'll get a pop-up message warning you that these enemies in this level are going to get a little bullet spongy if you don't go and complete a few side quests to increase your stats first. And if you enjoy that sort of thing, then maybe Shadow Warrior 2 might just be for you. After completing the tutorial mission, you'll be introduced to this hub area, a place you'll travel back to in between missions by simply holding the touchpad. Here you can buy new weapons and upgrades, you can sell loot you've found throughout levels, and you can talk to a few NPCs who'll offer you your side quests. Getting further into the game unlocks the bounty board for yet more side quest like missions, and the challenge mode which has you going up against loads of enemies in a little arena. There's certainly a lot to see and do in this hub area, but a lot of content doesn't necessarily mean it's all worth experiencing. Shadow Warrior 2 once again puts you as your favourite joke-cracking assassin, Lo Wang. His character hasn't changed a whole lot from the previous game, although you will notice that the sometimes clever or funny dialogue of 2013's Shadow Warrior has certainly been reduced in this sequel to 90% of the comedy being revolved around the male genitalia. The constant repeat of the same joke did begin to get old pretty fast here.
Well, what should I cut off him? Please say his cock, his cock, his cock, his cock, please, please, please.
Any body part will do.
Yes!
Nevertheless, Lo Wang is still as fun to play as he was before, actually even more so this time, as the entire control scheme has been remade. No longer are your powers and sword skills input using the touchpad or through troublesome sequences that can sometimes interrupt gameplay. It's much more streamlined. Your powers this time are matched to the D-pad, with up being a spike launcher move called the Grip of Darkness, left being now your healing power, which is so much more convenient, and right being an invisibility vanish power that can allow you to get out of some heated situations. Down on the D-pad is to activate this game's new rage mode called Shadow Fury, that highlights enemies and sends you into a buffed rage. R3 is your 5th ability, which is a Chi Blast, sending close enemies in your vicinity back and on their ass. The touchpad is now used to shrink and zoom your minimap, and in stages you can hold it to fast travel to and from the hub area really quickly, which I thought was a really incredible feature. Now your R2 button still functions as your primary attack, and L2 now replaces R3 as your ADS button. It also applies as a secondary attack button for some weapons. L2 is also used in conjunction with the left stick to still perform your special sword attacks, but only requires one movement followed by L2 to input. It's much less complicated now and so much more smoother. Up on the left stick is your forward stab move, left or right with the left stick is your spinning slash, and down on the left stick is your projectile move. These are still the same attacks that were in the previous entry, but I'll be honest, I used them a lot less in this game due to how powerful your weapons and especially guns can become with enough upgrades and gems equipped. R1 is still your dash move, but the sprint has now been remapped to L3 like so many other modern first-person shooters. The great part about dash in this game is that the stamina feature is gone. You can now dash and sprint as much as you like, likely done due to the game's much larger explorative levels. L1 once again is your access to the weapon wheel. The weapon wheel in this game can be fully customised however you like, choosing what weapons go where. This is a great idea with the amount of weapons that this game has. But what wasn't a great idea was making the weapon wheel in real time, so switching weapons can become a hindrance in battle as it can cause you to get attacked and doesn't pause or even slow the game down in the background. Tapping L1 is a quick switch between the last two melee weapons that you had equipped, whereas the triangle button acts as the quick switch between the last two ranged weapons. Square is still your reload button and inspection of your gun if fully loaded, and again there's some really neat animations. However, in battle, square also acts now as a parry button if you have a sword equipped, allowing you to parry an enemy attack if pressed at the right time and in turn counter your opponent. This does offer much more needed depth in the melee combat. Circle is the new crouch button, and X is your jump, which Shadow Warrior 2 introduces a double jump if X is pressed twice. The safety net of this is all fall damage is depleted in this game. You can fall from any height and fulfill your superhero landing dreams. Shadow Warrior 2's combat is complemented with more than 60 plus weapons, everything from double barrel shotguns, machine guns, bow and arrows, dual katanas, wolverine claws, miniguns, rifles, revolvers, and so much more. I can't go through them all like I could in the first game, but there's certainly enough to find your own unique weapon wheel filled with your favourites. Another great aspect is all the guns can be attached gems that makes any one of them as powerful as another. It's not like Borderlands where a weapon you may favour at the start will be weak and redundant a few hours later. Here you can continuously keep upgrading and keep your favourite weapons still packing the heat that you may need for later levels. And the gun combat in this is so much more smoother and nuanced over the first game. But no matter how better Shadow Warrior 2 is to play, it doesn't hold back the seeds of repetition from the pacing, the level design, and the recycle content that is also present in this game. The gameplay cycle consists of returning to your hub, speaking to a character who shouts or condemns Lo Wang before sending him back out to do their bidding. You walk around the same hub area upgrading your stats, your boosters, buying new weapons with the same money currency that's in the first game, although here you do get a lot more of it. But all this upgrading and gem equipping and sorting out, adding into weapons just feels so finicky and out of place in Shadow Warrior. Instead of just hopping from level to level enjoying the strongest part of this game, the combat, you're instead constantly falling into this muck of skill points and weapon gems. Power-ups to just allow you to dual wield, for example. No longer is it as simple to pick up another gun and hold it in your other hand, now it's an equipable gem in a menu with 100 other gems that you've also got to manage, all with dozens of stat changes, and it's a lot in what is just trying to be a fun shoot 'em up with demons and dick jokes. Once you've spent another 20 minutes of your time wandering around the hub area again, seeing the same menus and contemplating if it's even worth continuing on with your quest, you'll hit a loading screen and be sent to the next level area, of which the game has just a total of 3 areas in the whole game. You got Japanese town, you got forest, and you got the futuristic Zilla city. All 3 of these level areas are free roamable outside of missions, but all 3 of them are recycled again and again for every main and side mission, and once you've seen each one half a dozen times, you will be tired of them. Now I do have to admit that the levels are a lot more open than the levels in the previous game, and come with new traversal mechanics such as climbable walls and ladders, and ledges that also allow you to climb onto rooftops and structures. The levels are beautiful, with the forest area being full of vegetation and strong lighting, the town having some of the best and most iconic Japanese set dressing, and the futuristic city was really surprising when you first travel there, like a cyberpunk anime city complete with holograms and layered districts built on top of one another. But pitting all your mission content within just 3 areas is demanding a lot of your player's patience, especially one with over 20 different missions and side quests. What also doesn't help are the quests as some of the most laborious objectives you can develop. Go here and kill 20 of this enemy. Go there and protect this person and kill more of this enemy. Now go over here and kill this tougher enemy, which is surrounded by more of the same enemies. The only thing that separates the side quests from the main quests is the story, but besides that you can barely tell the two apart with how repetitious the objectives can be. Speaking of the story, in Shadow Warrior 2, it's not as mystical and interesting. Those cool ancients in the first game are now laughed off here as simple celebrities in this sequel. Enemies also aren't as varied and unique as those found within the first, where the first game had a smaller but stronger cast of attackers, supporters and ranged enemies and special enemies. Shadow Warrior 2's rogues gallery mostly consists of aggressive, in-your-face foes. And then the same classes featured within the previous game without many new or striking memorable foes to face. The boss lineup also really suffers due to the game only featuring 3 boss fights. 2 of them are the same character. I will admit though that the final boss was more fun to face than Xing was in the first game, but again that's not saying much. Shadow Warrior 2 takes place 5 years after the previous game, and the demonic invasion of Earth has ravaged the planet and gotten out of control. Lo Wang is back to being a mercenary, now working for the Yakuza. The Yakuza is currently being led by Mezu, the same Mezu that was in the previous game, one of the ancients and brothers to Hoji. It turns out his daughter, Kamiko, who has been working as a spy in Orochi Zilla's new revolution, has been kidnapped by Zilla, and now the Yakuza wants Lo Wang to go rescue her. Lo Wang manages to infiltrate the Zilla labs where she's being held, however she's injected by Zilla's henchwomen with Compound 61, which causes her body to burst into a possessive-like insanity. Lo Wang rescues Kamiko and takes her back to his ally, a new character, Smith Masamune. Smith is a magical merchant and has the power to cure Kamiko, but to ensure her soul's safety, he transfers her into the mind of Lo Wang for now. From here forward, Kamiko becomes the sidekick to Lo Wang throughout the game, replacing Hoji as the exposition character, and one for Lo Wang to talk to, projecting his thoughts for the player. Kamiko really doesn't become any more than that. Whilst off to find the ingredients to make Kamiko's cure, the hub area where Smith is stationed is attacked by Zilla's forces, and Kamiko's corrupted body, now steadily mutating, escapes into the wilderness, and Smith succumbs to his injuries he had suffered in battle. Without Smith, Wang needed new help, and luckily, Amiona, Hoji's sister, is still around to help. Meeting back with her, currently guarded by Gozu, Wang asks her to help him in restoring Kamiko, to which Amiona agrees. However, it's not long until Amiona double-crosses Wang, revealing she wants Kamiko's body for herself. With Kamiko's mutated body at her command, Amiona will use it to destroy the gates created thousands of years ago by Hoji that held back the chaos, thus destroying the world and allowing Amiona to rule without challenge. Lo Wang, Kamiko, Mezu, Zilla, and returning Xing team up in a final confrontation with Amiona. Wang kills Amiona, thus also destroying Kamiko's body. However, Kamiko decides it's her destiny to seal the Chaos Gates and rectify Earth and the Shadow Realm. However, the gates shatter, and as they do, the chaos, in the form of a huge dragon, emerges. This is where Shadow Warrior 2 ends, likely setting up the 3rd game in the series. Now once completed, Shadow Warrior 2 does allow you to head back to the hub area to complete and finish any side quests or challenges you had left, continually leveling up, finding new weapons and upgrades, and free roaming around the game's levels. You also get a new powerful shiny sword. In fact, it's the sword that's in the opening video to the game, the Ryuken. Outside of this, there's also the return of the art gallery that has tons of epic concept art for all the characters, enemies, environments and more. In the end, Shadow Warrior 2 just wasn't as exciting to me as the previous game. Its constant recycle of the same content, picking up similar weapons, fighting the same enemies, revisiting the same couple of environments, became incredibly stale at an astonishing rate. And despite the game trying to regain its momentum with fun combat and challenges, it just weren't enough to pull it out of the mud. Shadow Warrior 2 is a significant example of a looter shooter that could have been so much more had it paced its content better, had a stronger narrative to connect with like in the previous game, and had more to actually see and do. Where were the giant climactic bosses? Where was the clever comedy? What happened to the interesting lore? What happened to looter shooters that had good loot? These were a few of the many questions I had leaving Shadow Warrior 2. Thanks again for tuning in to my Shadow Warrior content. Shadow Warrior 3 is now out and I am thoroughly excited to play it, and I will try and get my review out for Shadow Warrior 3 within the week. But until then, I will see you in the next video where we take on the Dragon of Chaos. I'll see you there, and adios. Take care.